10 o'clock, everybody. Good morning. We have a quorum. I'll call the regional district Strathcona Electoral Areas Committee meeting of September the 3rd to order. Chair acknowledges we're located in the traditional territory of the Latch-Attached people, and the first item of business will be the adoption of agenda.
Adoption.
Well, I hear Director Vanesh moving adoption, and I had an item that I was hoping to add to the agenda, which would be an item of new business, just looking to discuss electric car and bicycle charging.
All right, I'll put that under new business. Did we have a seconder? Did you second that, Director?
I'll second that.
John, all right, thank you. All those in favor? That's unanimous. That's carried. No petition or delegations this morning. Adoption of the previous meeting minutes, please.
Move adoption.
Second.
Thank you. Anything there? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's unanimous and carried. Any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, no public considerations, notice of motion or chairs reports. We'll move down to staff reports. Number 1, Area C Official Community Plan Project Update for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Anything from staff?
Annie will present this for us.
Thank you to the committee through the chair. This report is to provide an update on the Area C OCP review project as we're continuing to work on phase 2, being the community engagement phase. This month, we're still continuing to schedule and hold focus groups with community organizations. Although it was relatively quiet over the summer, we continue to hold conversations with a few more groups, and we reached out to the Quadra Foundation, who graciously shared their list of community organizations, which enabled us to expand our reach to around 30 more groups. So that was great. So far, 3 more conversations have been scheduled as a result of that outreach. We've also released the community contact summary, which at a high level includes things like demographics, census data, some discussion questions, and an overall overview of the project so far and themes from consultation. We're still working on scheduling our next in-person meetings out in community. I know it's been a very busy summer for a lot of Outer Islanders. And that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything from directors? Director Winnie?
Thank you, Chair. Just moving over here to I wanted to say thank you for the report. I really appreciate the monthly update. You know, a lot of the process isn't necessarily visible to the whole community, so it's really great to get this report coming in. And I had a chance to read over the community context summary, and seeing that it had been posted was great. But I have a couple of questions or comments, so maybe I'll just go through those if that's all right with you, Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I did notice that there is a listing, somewhat of a listing of, I guess it's on page 5, in that really big paragraph there. I think it's talking about all of the wharves, but it doesn't necessarily include all of the wharves. It missed one at Hoskin Landing, which is one that we actually have in our own portfolio here of wharves. And there's also a public wharf at Shoal Bay, and of course the Harriet Bay and Kwatieski Cove wharves, which are managed by the Harbor Authority as well. Yeah, and I had a question around page 11. It says, since the 2006 OCP, the average number of persons per household has decreased by an average of 0.6 persons, indicating an aging population and smaller family sizes and more single-person households. And then it goes on to say, this could have implications for the demand of one-bedroom type dwelling units in the future. And I'm curious if you could just dig into that a little bit, what kind of implications that would potentially bring.
Thank you through the chair. Ultimately, what that is pointing out is that there may be a sizable population that's looking to downsize from a larger family home to a smaller family home. that's just a demographic trend that we see across Canada.
Okay, so it's sort of more of an implication of like we might need to build smaller homes or permit smaller homes? Was that the idea?
No,
No.
smaller homes would be permitted anyway. It's more of just recognizing that what we know as demand for housing like smaller homes may be more desirable than the larger family homes. So looking at our housing needs report in conjunction with this, it just shows that there may be greater interest, for instance, in like accessory dwelling units or like a 1-bedroom cottage that is an accessory on an existing larger family home.
Okay, I appreciate that. On page 12, there is a sentence that states that Quadra Island, Surge Narrows, and Stewart Island all have their own organized community associations. And I'm not clear if there actually is one on Quadra Island right now, but maybe you have that information.
I guess just speaking on behalf of Addie to point out that Quadra Island, of course, has many community associations. There may not be one association that speaks for the entire community of Quadra, not one that I'm aware of. But certainly there are multiple that are like the QIRS or ICANN that are quite involved in a lot of community activities. So it's intended as a broad sweep that there are community associations that we're consulting with.
Okay, well, I appreciate the clarification because when it also mentions Stewart Island and Surge Narrows, because there is the Surge Narrows Community Association and there is a Stewart Island Community Association. So in context with those two, it made me think that you were referring to a specific community association for Quadra Island. I have a question or comment on page 13. I was curious where the photo was from, if it was from somewhere in area C. But I was also wanting that page is about the licensed childcare spaces. And I see that the stats came from 2022 Campbell River Early Years Council report. And I don't know if this number it will change or not with this information, but I just wanted to flag for you that there is a brand new childcare facility on Quadra Island, which has been built co-located on the school district 72 Quadra Elementary land. So there may be more spaces available now than in 2022. I'm not sure, but you may want to investigate that. On page 14, and this is I'll just flag this as something that's throughout the document. There's things that look like they're hot links. On page 14, it's the Active Transportation Network Plan. It's in bright blue letters. It's underlined. None of the things that look like hot links are actually hot links. So when it goes to the ICSP, the Integrated Community Sustainability Plan, kind of directs people there, but then they can't actually find it because those links don't work at the moment. So I just wanted to flag that for you. On page 15, I would mention that you're talking a lot about Area C being a well-known destination for adventure. Sea kayaking is a significant outdoor recreation activity, which seems to be missing, at least from the top of that page. And the Quadra Recreation Society operates the community center, but it isn't mentioned, and neither is Main Lake Provincial Park, which is a significant part of the landmass of Quadra Island and definitely something which brings visitors to Quadra Island. So I think that maybe including that park would be helpful. And there is a cute little spelling mistake where it talks about abundance of natural features, including hiking trails and steams. And yeah, and then again, just the housing needs report is on page 18, is not linked. And on page 19, if you look at page 19, it's talking about the types of housing that are available, and it says that there's no banned housing in Area C. And I was curious about that because Cape Mudge Village, I believe, has quite a bit of housing on it. So I'm not sure if for some reason that's not included in Area C, or I don't know if you have a explanation for that.
Generally speaking, when we're addressing Area C, we are excluding First Nations lands because it's not under the authority of the plan. So that may be why, unless Annie has a...
Okay, it's just that it,
For census data, I think when there's less than 250, might be 250, might be a different number. number of units, they report it as 0 sometimes because um, it has to do with confidentiality and reporting
Oh.
of statistics.
Okay,
So.
sure, that makes sense. I just seemed a little bit, I was wondering why it would look like that. And then I had some questions around the job market information that I believe starts on page 22. Just gonna scroll there. Because when I read that page, and I was really trying to use the lens of reading this with like being a community member, and um, I didn't realize that we were playing a crucial role in hydroelectric power generation, but I love that that's coming for us. However, it says the headline on that page is about the job market and how have the job market and local economies changed since the last OCP. And then it goes into the next sentence talking about historically, the area's economy has been based around forestry and other resource extraction industries, and then it goes into these details about agricultural, forest, and fisheries, and the top 3 industry sectors being construction, accommodation, and food service. But then there's a graph with 3 colors, and I don't understand how any of those items that are mentioned, the top 3 industry sectors being construction or accommodation and food service, are actually like in those graphs. Maybe we could just add those some way to explain to people that are reading it, like, is that a sales and service occupation? Which ones would be occupations unique to a primary industry? Is that the resource sector? I just didn't really understand the graphs versus the information that's presented on that page. So, yeah, for me, I would prefer a little bit of clarity on that. And on page 31, there's an item about economic development, and it lists tourism as number 1. And I was curious if that information was coming from the Discovery Islands Chamber of Commerce or if it had come from another source as like the focus for economic development, because currently the Discovery Islands Chamber of Commerce is immersed in a 2-year project with collaborating with the Weebakay Nation and the Quadra Island Foundation. And they're doing an economic diversification plan that has quite a lot of REDIP and ICE-T funding involved. So I was just wondering if that had been considered when you had flagged that as the number 1 area for tourism as being economic development.
Just to speak quickly to say that all of the ideas that are in that table are just the topic areas that we heard out of engagement. There is no policy direction that is being purported here. It is just flagging that that was something that was brought up by residents in engagement to date. So to
Okay.
be explored further, that's all it is.
Ah.
And in no particular order.
Okay, okay, great. That's good. That's helpful. Thank you. And then my last question I'll land on is that on page 33, there's quite a list of OCP topics and emerging objectives. And I wasn't sure what, it talks about public amenity land use as the OCP topic. And then it has the objective is promoting research. And I was just looking for some clarity on what that meant.
Again, this would have been something that came up in engagement. So it could be referencing either your question previously about finding lands, pardon me, that would be suitable for housing, for instance, or other types of research that we might do on what lands are available for different purposes. But again, it's a broad swath objective that we're exploring in the next round of engagement. There's no specific direction there.
Okay, so researching what could be done for land or with land that we already own. Yeah. Okay, it was a question mark for me. All right, great. Well, hopefully we can get those hot links working. That would be really beneficial. Okay, thank you.
Anything further from directors? Seeing none, call the question on receipt. All those in favor? That is unanimous and carried. Number 2, Oyster River Bank Protection Flood Protection Services for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It might be simpler if maybe I just explain the report and some of the options in here. So we have 2 current services right now, the riverbank protection and the flood protection service. One is has a significantly larger group that contributes to the other. They both need ongoing financial support for maintenance and inspection and long-term asset management repair. So what we've done, because there is really very few folks that draw from the one service, and it can be quite, financially challenging to, collect the necessary funds. And so what we've dived into is whether there's a really a larger benefiting area that those folks are contributing to that can be melded into a larger service, and we feel that's available. And so what we're suggesting is that during the financial planning process, that we bring forward some of the numbers that have been in the engineering reports for amounts that need to be accounted for inspection and maintenance work moving forward. And that before that time, we look at amalgamating the 2 services together into one larger service that will significantly spread the cost to all the folks that are benefiting from both of those services currently.
Directors? Mr. Rice?
Thank you, Chair. So just the one question that I had, just to make sure that I am clear, it does seem that the 2 options have quite a different financial impact to them. So option B had the best. Am I correct on that? Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? On receipt then, all those in favor? That's unanimous and carried. Director Rice?
I'd like to move option B. I don't have it in.
Second. I think he was.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that is unanimous and carried. Next one is Climate Resiliency Service Proposal. Electoral areas B and C for receipt.
Second.
Mr. Chair, maybe I'll speak to this. Might just be simpler as well. So again, bringing back a report for hopefully maybe some input, or if the directors are happy at this point, we've tried to create a template for the service that has a large umbrella that that can suit what may come forward in the director's mind, as well as taking, I think the impetus of the service may have been the wood chipping, and that's where the dollar figures came out based on a worst case scenario of us not getting grants, and then what we spend and what we need. And then there was some further conversation about what could be. So I've kind of used the ceiling that we've had in the 0.069 per 100,000, giving you an indication of what that would cost the average in home, taking away what we may contribute to wood chipping. Again, it's not a for certain that we would spend that 83,000. That's just a worst case scenario, if you will, if we didn't get the funding that we're getting, and what that would leave you with for other programs. Again, happy to take your input, take it back, massage it, add things to it, but just trying to come up with a high level definition of the services, and use that for things that you may have in mind or that may come forward in the future. So for discussion purposes, happy to take input, or, again, if you like what you see here, tie a bow on it and bring something forward for creating the service and the tasks that we would need to do that.
Thank you, Director Nash.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a question about process and community consultation for this. My inclination here is to go to referendum. I know that's more expensive than an alternative approval process. and wanting to tie this into the 2026 election, have the referendum as part of that, just to sort of simplify things. Wondering if staff could sort of explain that process and recommendations for how we would do that if that was the case.
Yeah, good question. So generally, when we say, excuse me, referendum is more expensive, it's in terms of not holding it during the election. But as you know, we have costs associated with the election, and if you just put another question on there, I would say those costs are not material. So yeah, if it's your wish or desire to put that on there, have a referendum there, I agree. We're only a year away from that now. I would suggest that if that's what you want, referendum be held, but hold it at the election. If you wanted to hold it before, yes, there'd be additional costs.
And as far as process, like would I refer this to the EASC to come back up in 6 months to start that process, or what would you recommend as far as process?
Well, I was saying the process is fine. I mean, if we get direction, ultimately that you like what you see and bring it forward with the intent of having it as a referendum question during the election, that's fine. At this point, want to see if the money amount works for you. Does that seem like enough funding based on what wood chipping and what it leave you? And if you had any other ideas that you felt would fall under this that we could possibly flesh out and give you an idea what those would cost, because you can see what amounts of money are available to you. So, just give us your feedback on what you see or think here. And once we come closer to figuring out what that service is going to look like and cost, then we can move forward with the intention of providing that as a referendum question at the election.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, for me, I like the description of the service. I like keeping it really broad. I don't think we know what all the potential projects could be at this point as we understand climate change science better and come up with innovative ways to decrease our greenhouse gas emissions. So I really like the broadness of that. And I'd love to hear Director Mawini's thoughts on things and if she has any suggestions for changes before we move forward.
Mawini?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I do have a couple of questions, actually. My first one is that when I looked through the report, it seemed that and I could be mistaken, so I'm looking for clarification, that the estimated costs for wood chipping are based on all road accessible properties on Quadra Island. I believe that wood chipping has been previously offered on Reed Island as well to road accessible properties. And so I guess it's a two-part question. Are the costs of Reed Island included in the estimates of these annual costs? Is part one.
Okay, Sean can help me out if I'm wrong, but I think what we've done is taken the costs, the worst case scenario in terms of providing wood chipping for what we've done in the past, and assuming that wasn't covered by grants. So if we had provided wood chipping, Sean, again, correct me if I'm wrong, if we'd provide wood chipping on Reed, and road accessible properties, we're drawing from the services that we provided and the costs that were incurred.
Through the chair, yeah, I feel comfortable with this 150,000 a year for the overall service. The wood chipping, I'm assuming it's going to be cheaper offered directly under this service, because when it's offered under the Fire Smart grant, we have to truck it to certain locations, which eats up the cost. Whereas if we offer it under our own service, people that contribute can just keep their own wood chips at the end of their driveway, which would drastically lower the transportation cost. So I feel comfortable with this number that me and Tom worked out.
Okay. And further on that point, so that includes Reed Island, but currently this service is sort of, it's a circle for all of Area C. And there are some properties which are on, obviously not many, but there are some on other islands that maybe would not necessarily benefit from the wood chipping. Or has there been any thoughts on providing occasional service, or I don't know, a wood chipper that a community member rolls around or some sort of thing to like maybe support people that are living in Owen Bay or in Refuge Cove or something like that.
Through the chair, in about 8 months ago, we did offer this to the Fire Smart service in Owen Bay through a community wood chipper.
Okay, so we did have a community wood chipper in Owen Bay. Oh,
Same as
okay.
Reed Island.
Okay, so there are, so that was my, a little bit of my concern was that if the service area was all of Area C, but they weren't necessarily deriving a benefit, but you're saying that they are. The other outer island communities can be served with this service as well.
Correct. It's the cost of finding the chipper and transporting it to the location.
So just for clarity, so we have assumed, unless we get direction otherwise, that all of areas B and C would be in the service area. And yeah, obviously providing wood chipping. So we would have within those two service areas that people would contribute by assessment for the wood chipping service. And we would provide that to the maximum requisition we have in there. So what we would say is, hey, this is what we're going to collect. You're in the chipping service. And that doesn't mean it would be equal every year, but we'd have a pot of money to get to wood chipping to everybody. Now, if we didn't want to provide that to everyone, we could shrink the service area if that was your hope or will.
Right, okay. No, I think that I'm really happy to hear that it could be provided to folks in the outer island communities as well. So I think that's great. I just wasn't sure. I didn't want there to be some sort of imbalance where it was being an imposed or referendum ask, and then they weren't going to necessarily be able to derive a benefit from it. But it sounds like they will, which is amazing. So it's interesting because here at the table, we're really talking about the service and we're using the term wood chipping a lot. And I would really like to have the name of the service include the word wood chipping. I think that it's really a clear statement on the focus and the type of climate resilience efforts that we are focusing on with this service. And I think climate resilience alone could potentially sound unrelatable. So including the name of the bylaw with wood chipping really makes it clear what the focus is. So I would really like to see that. And then from my perspective, I am interested in having I have a preference for the maximum requisition to be 0.059 rather than 0.069. Really, we did a Wharves AAP and I heard that maximum requisition of 0.069 seemed to be a pain point for people. And I'm hoping that obviously a maximum requisition doesn't mean we actually go to that level. And for me, I think part of the reason for creating this service and calling it wood chipping and climate resilience is that now we have a service, we have a place where we can put grant funding on all sorts of different climate resilience projects that don't necessarily require a tax requisition from the community, but that we have a service so we are able to apply for those grant funds.
If I can, Mr. Chair, no problem with that. We can amend that. I think there's a lot of benefits too. Like if we have a service and like a couple of years ago, the province, excuse me, provided some growing communities fund. Well, if you have a service, you have something that can be contributed to, right? So let's say there's a grant or there's gas tax or something like that. You have now a spot. So let's say 059, I don't know, created a little less money, obviously, but you still have a vehicle to access more funds. So that's not a problem. I think at this point, if we had, because it's a two service, participation, if Director Vonish supported that, we can just get his acknowledgement. We're happy to, make any amendments to that.
Yeah, thank you. I support calling it the wood chipping and climate resiliency service, and I also support the tax requisition being 0.059 rather than 0.069.
And I just had one question or comment because there's two draft bylaws attached to this report. one from some time ago, which was sort of like the first version and then the most recent version. And I noticed that some of the language at the top is different. And I know, and I noticed that in the report, it said that this was sort of like a, a working draft. So I'm not expecting it to be perfect, but there was a difference in language, whether it was like authorizing provision of the service within a part of the RD or within specified electoral areas, which is what it said previously. So I was wondering if it would need to say the within specified electoral areas because it is more than one area. It's a shared service.
I only have one version of it, so,
Down at the bottom of the report.
no, one version of the bylaw. You said you had two versions of bylaw?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
So, okay, how about you?
I can show it to you
Yeah.
later.
So
Yeah.
what we'll do is we will bring this back. We'll change the requisition, the amount totals, and change the title of it. And because we're not under a tight time frame, if we're going to bring it as a referendum question next October, what we'll do is we'll bring that back. And if you can provide me with any of the, let's say, conflicts between the two versions, happy to make changes to that. And then we can bring that to the board, and then what we'll do is following that, we'll bring a report on, establishing the service and the the referendum and how that's gonna roll out.
Okay, that sounds great.
Got a call the question on receipt. All those in favor? And none opposed, that's carried. Subsequent motion, anyone?
Oh,
I mean, not sure. B might fit the easiest one, I suppose. I guess
okay.
further research will change the requisition, but B is probably the easiest one, and it'll come back one more time.
I'll move that that staff take into consideration the discussion around the change in name and tax position amounts, and bring the report back to the committee for the consideration.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion, all in favor? Unanimous, that's carried. Number 4, grant application, active transportation infrastructure program.
Move receipt.
Second.
And I'll let Meredith speak to this.
Thank you through the chair. So this is to consider an application to the 2025 Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant Program to support construction of a multi-use pathway connecting the ferry terminal at Kwathiaski Cove to Harper Road and the Kwathiaski Cove Trail Network. This is a project that was identified as a priority within the Active Transportation Network Plan for Electoral Area C, completed in March of this year. That, of course, was a prerequisite for this grant application that we're now pursuing and was part of the intent of doing that project all along. So not a surprise that we're here today seeking support for this application. Funding for this program is provided by the province of BC as administered by UBCM. The program can contribute a maximum of 70% of the cost of eligible activities to a maximum of $500,000. The Electoral Area C Gas Tax Community Works Fund may be used to fund the SRD's contribution of project costs. The estimated cost of the proposed project is $325,000, which would result in a maximum grant contribution of $227,500 and require the SRD to commit $97,500 in gas tax funds. At the time that this report was written, the intake period was set to open on September 2nd. Since publication of the agenda, that has changed, and the date is now to be determined. But once that intake is opened, we are ready to submit. Should the application be successful, the SRD would be responsible for project-related expenses until the project is complete, at which point the funding can be released by UBCM. Thank you.
Director Woody.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm intrigued that it hasn't opened, the grant application hasn't opened because one of my, I do have a few questions actually about the application and they also get down to the fact that I'd really like to have more details about the project. And I'm wondering if, I will ask some of my questions, but I'm wondering if it hasn't opened, then would that potentially provide an opportunity to come back to our next electoral area committee meeting with more details? Do you have thoughts on that?
I suppose my question would be twofold. One is that if the intake does end up opening, say today, we would want to be ready to submit. The other side of that is what we have ready to submit right now is what was built through that ATMP process. And so the project was identified already through that. And the conceptual design, or I should say more detailed engineering design, is something that was created in response to that project that was already identified. So I guess but there are some details that are still being worked out because they require ministry support. So I guess maybe ask your questions and we'll see.
Okay, great. That's totally perfect. Well, my first question is really that I'm curious if BC Ferries is going to be included in the project or consulted. This area that is being determined that for this application goes alongside multiple rows of overloaded ferry traffic pretty much all summer, right? And the only information that I could find in this report about the application was 2 maps that were from Urban Systems, I think it was the name of the company that had done the consultation for the network plan. And I didn't really see a lot of detail. Like I saw a lot of detail in the grant application that was included in the report, as far as things, like charts showing like if the traffic goes this speed, then you need to have this kind of barrier. But I don't see any mention of any sort of safety barriers or anything like that in the report or in that map that's included here. And it kind like obviously I could be mistaken, but it felt to me like the majority of the $300,000 project was going to be like repainting lines to make space for people, but there kind of already is space for people. So I'm really, and then also putting in an all-way stop sign, which seems like it could be potentially challenging and would require Ministry of Transportation approval. We have ferry traffic every 30 minutes coming off there, right? So that could create quite a backlog if you're putting an all-way stop at the top of that hill. So it felt to me like there would maybe be a little bit more information around how there's no mention of a crosswalk at the top of the hill, because again, maybe those are things that Ministry of Transportation is in charge of, but I'm really hesitant to move forward with repainting some lines and not clear on if there will be, some sort of safety installation to protect people from the ferry traffic and whatnot. And then at the top of the hill, they get there and there's no crosswalk still. So can you maybe speak to some of those pieces?
Certainly. So there's a lot of questions in there. So
Yes.
if I miss anything, please bring it back up. To your first point, yes, absolutely. BC Ferries and Ministry of Transportation, we consulted with both through the ATMP process, and we are also consulting with now. Both are in support of what we're doing, and Ministry of Transportation has a more direct role to play, to your point of crosswalks and all-way stops or however the traffic is managed is under ministry authority. So we can't impose those things, but we can work with the ministry for something that would be acceptable to them. So what this project actually is, it does involve repainting lines, but what it is it's proposing a pedestrian and multi-use path from the ferry terminal to Harper Road, with also a connecting point to Quadra Elementary School, crosswalk at that end of the Harper Trail. Some of those details are still being sorted out, but the end, the Kwathiaski Cove terminal end is proposed to be a gravel pathway that would be separated by a 0.6 meter barrier from vehicle traffic. So what it is kind of a shoulder widening and and path installation there with a barrier. Farther up along, once you get past Green Road, that would most likely be a paved pathway because what we would be looking at there is the reallocation of existing paved surface, potentially widening farther into the shoulder, but that's at ministry discretion. But doing that to add a path requires that we would repaint the lines because we're effectively shifting where those lanes are. We're not removing vehicle lanes. We're just adding path lane. We are discussing currently with the ministry whether there would be a curb separation similar to what would be down below. We can put one in. It's currently on that map that's provided in the report. There is showing a 0.6 meter buffer. That would be a precast curb is what could be there, and that's in the budget or possible within the budget. However, in talking to the ministry, we may remove that to cut down on maintenance costs because the ministry may support like road service clearing. They would do it through the path if there is no curb, but if there's a curb, they can't do that. So that would become an SRD cost. So some of those details, it doesn't preclude us from doing one or the other, but that is something that we are still negotiating with the ministry. What the stop at the end and where the crosswalk goes, that likewise is something that the ministry is actively investigating right now. They have a warranted case. That's their terminology for crosswalks is they do a warranted case assessment on whether or not a crosswalk is warranted, whether the current location or a new location would make sense. For instance, I mentioned we are proposing as part of this project that the crosswalk currently at Harper Road and
Harriet Bay,
thank you, would move from one side of the street to the other. So it is more directly in alignment with both the elementary school and the Q Cove path or that Harper Road trail.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something that we won't know the answers to until the ministry completes their assessment, but they have already supported our project and we are working with them to find the best alignment for those bits of infrastructure that we know are necessary.
Okay.
I think I may have captured, but please go back.
You did a lot, which I'm really grateful for that. It would be really great to see some more of those details included in the minutes or in the report because for any community member that's reading that, it's not clear. But I do also have a comment on your suggesting that there will be a gravel path on the slope part going down from along the lanes of traffic to the ferry terminal. And I've had feedback from seniors that are living in the Cove that the gravel on the pathways that we have currently makes it almost impossible to use them with a mobility aid like a wheeled walker. So I feel like perhaps we would want to reconsider using gravel in that case, or at least consider some sort of material that could be compacted so that people with mobility aids are able to use the pathway effectively.
Certainly, and that is something that we are looking into as far as surfacing goes. When I say gravel, what I'm intending to say there is non-paved, because paving costs would be outside what we could fund through this grant. Not because it's ineligible, but because the cost of doing so would be prohibitive.
Oh, okay. But I thought it was up to $1 million that you could apply for.
Yes, but it's matching. And so
Right.
the SRD contribution for $1 million project would be substantial.
It's a 1/3. Is that right? We have to pay 1/3?
Yeah, it'd be a 30% of that.
Right. Okay. Okay. So yeah, I think that would be important to consider some sort of ensuring that people that need the space can actually use the space.
Agreed.
Okay. So apart from there being a potential concrete barrier on the lower half, it is essentially a lot of erasing lines and repainting lines.
Only insofar as the upper section goes, because we would be making use of the existing paved surface. But that section as well is being expanded into the shoulder. So there is some widening there. It's just that the repainting is not the bulk of the project, but it is a requirement of it.
Right. Okay. Because I noticed that in the map, in that upper area, it actually says constrained area. to be confirmed by survey. So does that mean that there is a chance we won't be able to move over into the shoulder like you're hoping?
No, in that case, the constraint there refers to there's a limited kind of a finite space that we can put all of these different lanes and uses that mean that we are within the BC Active Transportation Guidelines. Ideally, we would be seeking a wider path, but because the area is constrained, we are proposing a narrower path. It is still within acceptability limits of the guideline, but under a constrained classification.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification because that wasn't clear. And then I guess my last question would be that I know I've had some of my residents, constituents have included me in emails that they've sent to BC Ferries because that property there along the top of the hill is actually for sale right now. And people have been kind of prodding BC Ferries to consider getting it for more ferry overflow parking because the ferry overflow parking is dramatic. You know, it's like up the hill and around the corner and maybe down past the pharmacy and who knows if it's past the school too some days, right? So I think ensuring that BC Ferries doesn't have any upcoming plans or that we are working with their plans so that we don't end up doing this project and then realizing that it's not a good fit for BC Ferries work would be great.
Absolutely. And we are working closely with them for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. So should I make a motion, Chair, that
After receipt, you could make a motion.
that there would be more details of the project included in the minutes or? CAO, do you have a feeling?
Excuse me, if I can, Mr. Chair, if the motion that we have here passes, I would say as subsequent motion that the project details be attached to the report and included in the minutes.
Okay. Okay, I like whatever he said there. So, okay, I guess we're gonna vote on receipt first.
Okay, we'll call a question on receipt. All those in favor? That's unanimous. That's carried. Our motion, Director May.
I will move that the Strathcona Regional District submit an application to the 2025 Active Transportation Infrastructure Program for grant funding to develop a multi-use pathway connecting the ferry terminal at Quathayaski Cove to Harper Road and the Quathayaski Cove Trail Network as identified within the Active Transportation Network Plan for Electoral Area C, and that the regional district commit to overall management of the grant if the application is successful, and that if the application is successful, up to 30% of the project costs to a maximum of $97,500 be approved from the Electoral Area C Community Works Fund.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous, carried. Anything further?
Yes, I would like to move that the
Project details be attached to the report and reflected in the minutes, if that's what you.
yes, that's exactly what I would like to move. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rice. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, number 5, UBCM meeting requests for receipt. Oh, no. Staff
receipt.
Verbal report. Go ahead, staff.
Second.
No, there's no,
It just, Mr. Chair, it's just a verbal report. Edith had some early feedback from the province on meeting requests, which she'll give us.
Thank you, and through the chair. To date, we have not had a lot of feedback regarding the UBCM staff meetings. However, we have been advised that the 2 meeting requests that we submitted for the Ministry of Transportation and Transit have been regretfully declined due to an oversubscription of their meeting time. The UBCM ministerial meetings, we have received quite a few confirmations back. We have confirmation for the Ministry of Citizen Services, which was connectivity for cell coverages, Highways 19 Port Hardy and 28 Gold River and Tassis, the reevaluation of served and underserved areas, and that was for lack of last mile funding for broadband, removal of payphones in underserved areas. We've also had a confirmation of the Ministry of Infrastructure for the Healthcare Workforce Housing Project. We have confirmation for the Ministry of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation for support for Regional District Reconciliation Framework and Development. And we have a confirmation for the Ministry of Energy and Climate Solutions for joint advocacy power infrastructure upgrades for the Hoopsata and Walters Cove. So what we did not get from the ministry request that we submitted, again, transportation for rural transportation, we got a regret for. The Ministry of Forests for Indigenous Relationships, archaeological sites, we got a regret for. Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs, which was community water systems for VHA drinking water standards. Rural housing needs and infrastructure deficits, we got regrets for. And the Ministry of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness, slope stability for Zabalas, we got a regret for this year.
So correct me if I'm wrong now, Edith, what options are, we can take those and at UBCM directors can go try and make staff meetings with those?
Absolutely.
Right, yeah. So kind of disappointing, but
Okay, anything, Director? Call the question on receipt of the staff report. Oh, Mark, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Is the in the past few years, it seems like we have gotten most of the meetings we requested. Can Edith or Dave, if you have any thoughts on how this year compares to previous years as far as getting what the meetings that we wanted?
I would say unscientifically, it seemed like we got early rejections back on quite a few, which is really puzzling and disappointing. I mean, it's part of what UBCM is to provide opportunities for local government to speak with the ministers. So, you know, there's some real significant issues that we had there in terms of topics with transportation, Indigenous services, um, you know, water, capital infrastructure that we
Housing.
just got. Yeah, housing. That's I think it's bad. So I think that's another issue to raise is that, you know, why are we not getting these? Like, you know, they're talking about volume, but I don't know why these, you know, or how they determine that these don't make the cut. I think I would talk, if I was directors, I'd talk to the MLAs and say, you know, this is kind of our opportunity. Now we don't even have an opportunity to speak to them, and we have to try to, you know, grovel at the time to get a staff meeting.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'm wondering, just to be clear, Edith, the meeting I requested around with the Ministry of Transportation around the condition of Cortez roads, that was denied?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Wow, hugely disappointing. Thank you.
Dr. Rice?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, can we get a brief report on that? Because I would like to raise the issue promptly with the MLA.
Yeah, no, yeah, we can do that. We can have something for the board for sure. A report on that and maybe some options, you know, for writing a letter.
Because I was actually going to invite the MLA to those meetings,
Yeah.
so this is very disappointing.
Yeah, no, it's not good.
All right, call the question on receipt of staff report. All in favor? Anyone opposed? None opposed, that's carried. Bylaws, of course. Oh, yes, new business. Director Winnie.
Mr. Carn.
Thank you. Do I have to like move receipt of something before I've done anything, or do I just get to say what I want to talk about?
Yeah, you gotta say something before we receive it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I am really curious about getting electric car charging stations in the electoral areas and potentially, you know, other more rural municipalities of the Strathcona Regional District as well. I did a search of the minutes and remembered, because I thought we had talked about it before, and back in 2023, Director Rice had brought a report, and we had asked for a staff report on grant opportunities to support funding for the installation of EV charging stations in the regional district. That went through the board in 2023, and I just wasn't sure. It's very challenging for me to like search the minutes and find all the answers, because if you type in like the word car instead of the word vehicle, you don't actually get the information. So I guess what I'm curious about is two parts. Like, have we received a report on grant opportunities for that? That the board moved some time ago? And if we have, maybe could we have a follow-up on it? I guess I'm just curious how we can move that forward, because I do feel that it's an important thing to include, keep in the front of our minds that there are, these electoral areas which could benefit largely from having electrical vehicle charging stations in them.
If again, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to bring a follow-up, and I think from memory, it will include the information you're looking for. I believe the board kind of gave us instruction to look at car charging that was like no investment from the SRD, which left just BC Hydro opportunities, I believe. I'm looking at her hoping she knows more than I do. But I believe that's kind of, whether that's in a resolution or not, the kind of thought from the SRD was we would support them, but there's not much of a business case at this point. We didn't want to provide investment. And then going to the BC Hydro option, obviously they do. I think they have policy over minimum amounts of charging stations, which I think is 8 at this point, and then they set the criteria. So we offer sites up to them, but again, happy to bring a follow-up report refreshing everyone on that. So we suggest locations, and they either meet their criteria or not, and or they think they're sites that match their charging needs. So happy to do that. And just to segregate a little bit on that, because the bike charging, we have some funding, I believe, in the growing communities allocation in there, and that would be investment of our own that we just have to work with the Ministry of Transportation and identify those. So we're actively moving on those and in the electoral areas. Those are parks projects I believe we're moving on, but again, can bring the car EV charging report back and maybe tune it up a little bit to bring some clarity on maybe the new policy that the Hydro has in terms of those. At that point, if again the board wants to have us expand that into EV charging stations that we have to invest in, happy to do that. But I believe kind of the direction has been not to look at those that need investment, but happy to pivot on that.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, I feel like you just said there has to be 8 car charging stations to make it.
I believe that's Hydro's new policy that they will only install in locations that meet the needs of having 8 stations. Sheena, is that correct? Yeah.
Oh, okay. That doesn't seem like a really good fit for rural communities.
No, I agree that. So pivoting back to BC or the UBCM, that might be something that a UBCM that we try and make a staff meeting on, because you're right. I would guess that 8 charging stations apiece on Quadra and Cortez, is too many. And so what's the happy medium there? How do rural communities that don't need 8? For example, Sayward has one at the Co-op gas station, and there's 2, which I'm sure is appropriate. So you change the policy now and Quadra needs 8, and that, is a square peg in a round hole. There needs to be something there.
Okay, well, yeah, it would be really great to raise that with BC Hydro later this month if we can have that information. And the motion that I did find from 2023 was that staff prepare a report on grant opportunities that support funding, so I can see for the installation of the charging station, so I could see how that could be, like if we can't find grants to fund them, then I guess we don't have a service to put it through, right? I guess I'm really thinking about the regional district being able to take a role in collaborating to ensure that this can happen, because maybe there isn't the capacity in local business to make this happen, but it would be really beneficial to our communities if we could.
Yeah, I agree. And especially, again, considering hydro may be out of the equation with 8. And so maybe it's something that, would be incorporated in, let's say, a park service, right? In partnership with somebody else, because it would either have to be a ministry land or private land or BC ferries or something like that. So absolutely, just if you want, then maybe to make a motion on a report on an updated report on car charging and opportunities. I'm happy to consolidate what we've got, bring back some more information based on our conversation here. More options. Yeah.
Yes, I would like that.
I think it'd be great to put it in parks. Area is not part of that. That'd be wonderful.
See, you were fortunate in area A is that Hydro deemed that co-op gas station, they put it in, it's free, it's in your area, but the same didn't happen for, yeah.
Perfect.
Move receipt.
Well, first of all, is Director Minnie, have you got a motion?
Well, I wasn't sure if we had to do something
I
before.
think receive her verbal report and then I
Okay,
think
let's
she'd
proceed
likely
with
has some.
report. We need a seconder then.
Second.
Didn't you move it? Receipt?
It was just receipt of her verbal
Okay, we're
report.
good. All right, all those in favor? That's unanimous and carried. All right, a motion.
Okay, I would like to move that staff prepare a report on opportunities and for EV vehicle, no, EV car charging stations in the rural areas of the regional district, and provide an update on previous information which has been presented. Is that what you were thinking?
Second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? None opposed, that's carried. Motion to terminate,
Move termination.
Second.
all in favor? Unanimous, that's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.